Cheers. Yeah, no, this is great. Thank you very much for doing this.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Delighted to.
Thank you. You don't know my story, but when I was trying to learn about whiskey, I found your website, and this is like back at the day where you were offering a whiskey course. Do you
Oh
remember
my
that?
God. Jeez, yeah.
Years
that's
and
the-
years and years
The
ago.
South African guys. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I paid for the course. I took the course,
Oh, well done.
and then
Was it any good?
and then you shut it down.
No, I didn't shut it down. They shut it down.
They
yeah,
shut it
yeah,
down.
yeah. It nothing to do with me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was unfortunate.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it was quite a
It's actually a really good.
potentially groundbreaking thing. But yeah.
Yeah.
Was,
It was definitely a new way to learn,
yeah.
and I think like other schools have definitely picked that. Yeah.
Well, I'm delighted to meet a
Yeah.
former pupil.
But I mean, like when there was no education available, especially being in the North Americas, right? Like, where do you learn this stuff? I've been following you for a very long time, so thank you.
Oh, well, no, thank you.
Yeah, it's exciting. But I'm writing for the Whiskey Explorer magazine, so it's a
Yeah.
Canadian magazine,
Yep.
and we are covering Whiskey Live.
Sure.
Well, let's begin with like the festival itself. How long have you been coming to this festival?
I've been coming here for 19 years.
Whoa.
So yeah, I missed the first year.
The first year.
Uh,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
It's just the 20th year.
This is the 20th year, yeah. So yeah, this feels so old. It's been an extraordinary evolution of the show from really pretty small beginnings, because 20 years ago there weren't many whiskey shows,
Right.
It was kind of a fairly novel thing to try and do, and it was essentially tables, lovely setting, but just tables and 90% Scotch, and now you look at it and it's whiskies from all around the world, plus agave, plus sake, plus rum, plus Calvados, plus the Yeast, etc. It's a good microcosm of what is happening in the world of spirits, not just whiskey, but what's happening in the world of spirits. Yeah, it's an extraordinary beast.
Was it still called Whiskey Live? Then?
Yeah. It was always called Whiskey Live.
Okay.
So Whiskey Live started in London, so it was started by Whiskey Magazine. So London was first, then Tokyo, and then Paris.
Okay.
And now it's global, kind of franchised essentially.
So on record, do you have a favorite?
On record, do I have a favorite? Yeah, this one. Yeah,
This one.
yeah, undoubted.
Off record?
Well, this is the only one I do. So
Is that right? I thought you do the London one too.
no. I do Whiskey Show in London. I don't do Whiskey Live in London.
Got it.
Yeah, so yeah, this is the only Whiskey Live I still do.
Okay.
So that's why it's my favorite.
Got it.
Well, I suppose in some extent the one in Tokyo, then what we did in Tokyo, for I was kind of involved in the organisation in Tokyo, we added on the bar show
Okay.
to Whiskey Live because there was so many bartenders. So actually, it's a good way to
Yeah.
do that. And then it kind of flipped and it became bar show with Whiskey Live, and then it just became bar show and there was no whiskey, and now it's still bar show but there's more whiskey again. So it's kind of.
Probably the dynamics of the trend.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, then speaking of trends,
Hey, seamless. I like that.
what do we see? What do we see going on right now? I mean, the world is experiencing a significant reduction in sales, right? So what are you seeing?
Well, tough times. I think that you have to be honest about what is happening. It's interesting if you look from a historical perspective. Whiskey goes through these kind of big 20-year cycles. This kind of roller coaster, and we're 20 years on. We're kind of hitting a bit of a downturn. But whiskey always comes back. So I think the long-term resilience of the category is still there, but there are some worrying factors existing at the moment which probably didn't exist 20 years ago, because there are infinitely more distilleries. There's more whiskey being produced in every country, and yet you see global consumption declining. To be perfectly honest, you've seen that for the past 5 to 7 years, but people haven't necessarily cottoned on to the fact that even 5 years ago we were kind of paddling in a whiskey loch, and now we're beginning to wade in a whiskey loch. So that's worrying. But I do think when you go out and you begin to talk to people who are drinking whiskey and are coming to shows, etc., I do think there's still an inherent interest in whiskey. And I think part of the reason that there has been this decline, and this could be evidence that is perhaps just a short-term and a shallow decline, it is the fact that people are just holding on to their money. People are willing to spend, I don't know, 50 quid, 60 quid, 50 to 80 pounds, depending on, where you are in the market. The whiskies that are pitched in that area are actually doing well. So 12-year-old whiskey, 18-year-old whiskey, etc., is doing well, and actually sales are still good. The mainstream range, whiskey's always been built in the mainstream. But what you've seen in the past wee while is that, certainly led by the bigger companies, a belief that whiskey was a luxury product and solely a luxury product, and that was what was going to lead the market into the sunlit uplands of glory.
Yeah.
And that's not true. And that could never, because you can't build a market with 3,000 pound bottles of 20-year-old whiskey. That's absurd. So there needs to be this kind of recalibration in terms of thinking, in terms of mindset, and a lot of it simply revolves around price.
So do you think for the luxury brands, they need to make a pivot in how they're selling right now? Or are they going to maintain that luxury image?
I say I've got nothing in head. That market exists, and whiskey should play in that market. So I'm not saying whiskey shouldn't play in that market. But I think it's difficult to say that whiskey is luxury. You could say a Hermes handbag is luxury. You can say a bespoke suit is luxury because of the craftsmanship that goes into it. But a luxury whiskey stills are made of gold. The barley isn't picked by individual grains, and cosseted. All whiskey is made essentially the same way. So the luxurious nature of that is down to rarity or packaging or all this stuff that surrounds whiskey. So whiskey inherently is not a luxury product in the same way as a top-end car is, or a suit is, or a handbag is, or whatever. And also, I think the way that consumers are looking at luxury these days is different. So it's less about the bling and it's more about ethics. Okay. It's more about what I am buying is good for the world, not just good for me. So I think the luxury consumer is also beginning to shift. And I don't think whiskey is quite cottoned onto that. It's still very much at the bling stage. And yeah, I find it a bit tiresome, to be perfectly honest.
Which part of it?
Not all of it, really.
All of it?
I mean, it's fascinating to see. But it's not what excites me about whiskey, to be perfectly honest.
So you've seen the trends go in cycles, and it's almost predictable at this point. So what part of it excites you?
What excites me, and this is kind of the paradoxical thing about it, what excites me is the fact there is so much whiskey out there. On one hand, there's too much whiskey out there, but I'm very glad there's so much whiskey out there because I think the mindset of distillers around the world is what really excites me. I've just finished a complete rewrite of the Whiskey Atlas. Okay. And, it's a map of where distilleries are. It's also a map of mindset. So it's really fascinating to see how distillers in New Zealand are talking about similar themes to distillers in Norway, who they've never met. But actually they're thinking about whiskey, that it's reflective of place, it's reflective of community, because it's reflective of place, and there's a sustainability, an understanding about sustainability, that they're wanting to use local resources. The local resources can then influence flavour. So I mean, all of that is happening around the world, and I find that hugely, hugely exciting. But and that's the flip side of that. There is too much whiskey being made, but the good guys, I think, will continue. So yeah, I'm genuinely excited about all of that, about the way in which the question, what is whiskey, is being answered around the world. And I think from a Scottish point of view, I think that it's fascinating to see how Scotch is coping with that, because for over 100 years, Scotch had the world of whiskey to itself. And therefore had to produce in volume because it had to satisfy the palates of the world. And now that template has changed. That paradigm is over. So Scotch is now under pressure from all these other different countries. And I think the positive coming out of that is is a greater awareness of a need to change what Scotch whisky is and new approaches within Scotch. So I think, I'm an optimist. Whiskey will get through this because whiskey always does get through it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how it gets through and which brands actually do get through. But the underlying momentum within this is this questioning approach by distillers about flavour and about place. And I think that excites me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you wrote your book on the sense of place, right? And it all really stems back to the agriculture and everybody going back to their roots.
Yep.
And families that own agricultural land are now utilizing that, creating distilleries, blah, 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 breweries and such. But I find it fascinating when we're looking at different markets, right? Because you have exposure to different markets. We've got Scotland, who's hundreds of years of experience. Then we have got Canada, who feels very, very young. And then Australia is doing very new and innovative, creative things. What is your take on the word craft? Because craft is, for me, I've traveled to different markets as well, and it's all interpreted differently. So what is your interpretation of craft?
Craft is a repeatable human technique. Craft is different to art. So art is being individually creating something that is different. Each time it's different.
Yes.
A piece of music, painting, etc., etc. That's what art is. Craft is repeatable. So craft is attention to detail and a human intervention and a forensic attention to detail and beauty, but it is repeatable. And it's also learning from the past. So it's this handing down of technique and of approach and of thinking to create something.
Right.
But the interesting thing about craft is there's kind of two ways of looking at craft. One is it's on rail tracks, so it will never change. Because the way my great-grandfather made it is the way I make it, and it will never change. And it goes like that. Or the other aspect of craft is I'm actually going to innovate and I'm going to move off those tracks. And that's where it becomes interesting because the same principles that are governing craft are still there. But what is happening is that in order to keep it alive, it has to change.
Right.
So there's kind of two elements going in there. And I think, spinning that back into whiskey, I would say what Scotch has done, Scotch has changed. The way in which Scotch whisky has been made and the momentum behind the thinking behind Scotch whisky, really since the late 70s, early 80s, has been about efficiency. Okay, so the craft of Scotch whisky has become, how do we make it efficient? We understand what the craft is, we understand what the function of a distillery is, we understand how it works, but underneath that is how do we make more for less money?
Yep.
Okay. Whereas, and a lot of that then is driven by consistency. We want to make the same thing day in, day out, but we want to make it at a lower cost and in a more efficient way. And that's your rail track. That's you stuck on that straight down there. And then you compare that to Japan, for example. And you talk to Japanese distillers, whether that's in Suntory or Chichibu or wherever, and they will say, we want to make whiskey better today than it was yesterday. And we will utilize all that information that we have, but we will want to move it on and we'll want to move it off those tracks into something new. And I think that Japanese approach to craft, if any of this is making sense, I think that Japanese approach to craft is the one that is actually being tapped into by distillers around the world, including Scotland. You've talked to so many new distillers in Scotland, and their inspiration is as much coming from Japan as it is from what has been learned on those rail tracks in Scotch whisky.
Oh my gosh.
So there was a bit of a rambling answer, but yeah.
I mean, as you're talking, I'm like a million questions going through my can't keep up. Like Japanese, they use so many different varieties of yeasts, and like I studied sake before as well. I love sake yeasts, and And I love how they number their yeasts. It just makes it so much easier to understand. Do you see the Western world embracing some of the Asian methods or yeast? Let's just talk about yeast for a second.
Yeah,
Do you see
definitely.
them embracing
Definitely.
that?
Yeah, definitely. And then, yes. I mean, yeah, the simple answer is
Yeah.
yes. I mean, it's, again, coming back to Scotch, for years, you had distillers saying, the regulations, you have really tight regulations,
Yeah.
we can't do this. And you had people moaning about Scotch whisky regulations because not enough is happening, et cetera, et cetera. And there's actually a lot of flex in Scotch whisky. The fact that everybody used the same yeast was because of efficiency, was because, the Scotch had to produce a lot of juice. Diageo has to produce enough for 20 million cases of Johnny Walker. So, there's a sound economic reason for doing that. But there was an impact in flavour and on complexity and on variety of flavours. And now that that paradigm has changed and distilleries are now set up to be single malt producers, not making single malt that essentially was for fillings for blends, the first thing that these distillers look for is how do we make our whiskey different? How do we cut through?
Yeah.
I'm making 500,000 litres a year. How do I compete with Glenlivet making 20 million? Yeah, well, you compete through flavour. How do I compete through flavour? Oh, well, yeast. Barley variety, roasting of barley, different distillation techniques, fermentations, bam, bam, bam. All these things are possible within the Scotch whisky regulations, but people just didn't explore them. But they are exploring them now, and that is happening all around the world. And a lot of that, coming back to that question, a lot of that is driven by distillers going to Yamazaki, and going, oh, hang on a minute, you're one of the biggest distillers in the world, and you get direct fire stills. Yeah, because we stripped out the steam and put direct fire in. Why? Because it tastes better.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing floor malting. Why are you doing floor malting? It's more expensive. Because it tastes better.
Yeah.
The bravery to be able to say, all right, rip it up, start again.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary. And that is happening all around the world. All around the world. You think about what's happening in Norway. There's an amazing strain of yeasts, a family of yeasts called Kveik yeasts, which are farmhouse beer yeasts. But every farm in every region in Norway would have their own different type of Kveik. Now you've got distilling taking place. Hey, of course, we're going to start tapping into that centuries-old knowledge in terms of yeast, and that's producing completely bonkers flavors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exciting. Really exciting.
So are there other spirits that you're really excited about or trends that you're seeing that consumers are really picking up on?
I remain a huge fan of agave. I'm endlessly fascinated by agave and the potential that exists there, while being cognizant of sustainability issues for mezcal, etc. And some companies just essentially ripping off the guys who grow it. And actually, in a kind of side issue of what's happening in whiskey in Mexico, with distillers beginning to take an agave approach to corn, using different corn varieties, that potentially is going to be an interesting development. So yeah, from a personal point of view there. Rum, as ever. I keep banging the rum drum. I have done since the 1990s. And, this year is going to be the great breakthrough. And next year, and rum just seems to kind of get there and then it builds up again and then it comes down again. But it will happen. I think there is general interest in that. I just kind of love all spirits. I'm just back from China. And I began to get my head around Maotai and Baijiu.
Baijiu, yeah.
By asking distillers the question, what are you looking for in terms of flavour? Because I think you should approach either of these within, Maotai's, subset of Baijiu. But if you approach them with your Western head on and your idea of what is right and what's faulty and what is acceptable, and then you pick up a glass of that, you can, what the hell is that? But then you speak to the guys who are making it and you say, right, what are you looking for? And they're going, well, we're looking for this sauce flavour because that, when it's blended and aged, is going to produce this, and that's going to go with food. Okay, fine. I'm beginning to get my head around that.
Very
No, I mean,
food driven.
it was totally food driven.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One of the guys went, we would never do a Baijiu tasting. We would never have Baijiu live. Because people aren't going to walk about, as we do at whiskey shows or rum shows, kind of tasting everything. It's there on the table so that people drink it with food.
Yeah.
That's why it's got that flavour. And they go, yes. I'm beginning to grasp it.
Yeah.
So, there's another little kind of rabbit hole I'm beginning to go down.
Yeah. Well, and it's centuries old, right?
I mean, the
History.
distillery I went to in Chengdu, it's been there for 600 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Older than some
You know?
Scotch whiskeys. Yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I would say all spirits really excite me.
Yeah.
Gin still interests me. And I'm quite glad that the gin boom has ended. And it's a sort of bizarre thing to say. I love gin. I'm really glad the market's beginning to collapse. Simply because there were too many. And it had already reached that contrived stage, as vodka did, with lots of, the only way we can sell it is with lots of different weird flavors. And as soon as you begin doing that, you know that, it's
Yes.
over. And the good ones,
Yes.
the good ones are remaining and the good ones are fascinating.
Yes.
And they begin to use local botanicals and you're seeing the difference between Japanese and Australian and Irish and English and French gins. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Really exciting.
Yeah.
And Canadian whiskey, Canadian single malt in particular. Yeah. Really exciting. No, I'm really excited to what's happening.
Yeah.
Especially in BC.
Yes.
There's a lot of really good thinking. A lot of
Got
good guys.
a massive challenge with economics.
Yeah.
Right. And the craft industry. Definitions are different province to province.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can define what is craft. And it's become a meaningless term because every spirit is crafted.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because I remember Desmond Payne, who is master distiller at Beefeater.
Okay.
Amazing, did walking encyclopedia of gin. Beefeater, big brand.
Yeah.
All these craft gins. And I remember being on a panel with Desmond, and the question came, what do you think of craft gin? And Desmond is very, very proper. He's very, very proper Englishman. He's actually Irish. And he swears beautifully, and just at exactly the right time. And he just kind of drew himself up, and he said, "How dare you suggest that I'm not a fucking craftsman?
Okay.
I take as much care over my gin as anybody making a tiny amount of it. I am a craftsman." And it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. So I think this idea that craft can only be applicable to something that's small isn't true. Yeah. In that respect. Anyway,
No,
you can cut that bit because
I like that. I like that explanation. I love your explanation of craft, because when we talk about like other industries, right? The craftsmanship, glass, or for metalwork.
Yeah.
You're still talking about the craftsman.
Yeah.
So that I like that approach.
Yes.
Yeah, makes more sense to me. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Worrying trends. That's a good one.
So I'm just getting really Scottish about this. Worrying trends, Generation Z, not drinking. I find that concerning.
Okay.
You need to get them drinking.
Yeah. RTDs? Non-alcoholic?
Yeah. That's a trend. What are they doing? How are they getting their kicks? It's not through alcohol.
I think it's cannabis.
Yep, exactly. There's other temptations out there. I think the industry's got to be aware of that. Highly processed food. People are beginning to get concerned about that, and alcohol appears to be
one of them.
Getting lumped in with it. Distillation is actually a way of processing. So, people, if legislation begins over that, I think there's a very strong neo-prohibitions movement that is growing. Alcohol is damaging, and alcohol, if taken in excessive doses, is not good for you, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm 100% on board with that. But the industry really needs to find ways to put out a positive message. So I think there's a lot of pressure coming to the industry at the moment.
Or maybe requiring more communication.
Yep.
I find it's
Good
very
point.
heavy when you need to sell a product that requires education. Technically, it's a very difficult product to sell from the very get-go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the new generation coming in, the new generation of drinkers are hitting their 30s, and they're able to economically be able to afford it a little bit more now, right?
Yeah, I mean, what they're drinking, are they drinking less but better? I think they probably are.
Less by, yeah.
Yeah, I
think
think
so.
they're being more, I think they're being pickier, and I think that's good. It'll spin back to...
Or the sustainability portion of it, right? Like, what am I
it swings back to
buying?
that, the ethics, it's, all of that is bundled up. And spirits can't get through, and I agree 100% that it's about education. And this, a time when whiskey is on the kind of downward slope at the moment, which will come out, but it's going down at the moment. This is the time to educate. This is the most important time to be out there talking in a positive way about it and explaining to people what it is, because once that market bottoms, you've lost a generation, because all you've been doing is trying to preserve your market share.
Yeah.
So it's tougher to educate at this point. It's really easy to educate when everybody wants your stuff. Essentially all you need to do is go, this tastes great, boom, and give it to them, fine. Now it becomes a hell of a lot harder, but it's actually more rewarding in the long term. And whiskey's a long-term business. Yeah. And so many of the big companies do not realize that. And that is worrying, I think.
So you've been coming to this event for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're talking about...
I was very young when I came. I was actually underage.
Really? All right. What do you see? What are some of the changes that you've seen? Like, I think for me, the biggest differences that I'm seeing right now between last year and this year, there's a massive gap. Like, a lot of brands that were here last year are not here this year. I'm also hearing that there are a lot less tables. So do you think that's a result of, say, what's happening globally, or do you think it's a different demographic that's coming through? Or like, what are you seeing that's different?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly quieter this year. Yeah, there's certainly fewer exhibitors. The French market is going through really, really tough times at the moment. Economically, and it's not I don't think it's just people turning away from spirits. I think it's genuinely people, certainly in Europe. Everybody's just going, well, this is how much I can afford to pay, and this is a luxury product. We can sort of use that word.
I know.
But it's a premium product. It will always cost a little bit more. It will always be a treat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find this year, quite a contrast to last. And what I found really interesting about last year was that over the 2 days I was here, the Scotch section was noticeably quieter than the French section.
Okay.
Which I actually found very interesting, that people here were beginning to take French whiskey seriously. And also perhaps at the back of their minds were going, well, actually, I've tried all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Which they hadn't, but actually, I'm interested in this new stuff. So it's, for me, walking around the show, it's not just about how many people there are, many exhibitors there are, but where are the knots of people? Which stands are busy, which stands are quiet. And that gives me an idea of what the kind of underlying trends are. And I think, seeing a really busy French section, I found that really fascinating, because the year before, over the years, it's been really hard for French distillers to try and sell French whiskey in France. And that's now flipped.
So do they focus, and I'm not familiar with the French market because we don't see much of it overseas, but do they focus more on marketing within their own country, or are they exporting within Europe?
There's very little getting exported at the moment. There's very few distillers with the volume yet. So you begin to see Armoric, you'll see Celtic Whisky Company, you'll see Edu. So some of the older ones from Brittany Yeah, you'll see in the UK. And you'll probably see them in the Scandi markets as well.
Okay.
And well, it's an industry in its infancy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find that exciting. Whiskey reflects, or spirits in general, they do reflect the economic climate.
Yeah.
What's happening?
So if we
And
get,
it's also interesting. I was chatting to a couple of folk here, China, etc., etc. Same trend. People are wanting, and I think I said it earlier. People will be wanting to buy whiskey still, but they'll buy it at mainstream prices. And in the UK, certainly, if you look at the brands which are performing really well, they're all in that mainstream market, and they tend to be newer. So they're Ardnamurchan or, Razi, Harris, or older distilleries which have kind of been rediscovered, like Glen Fettycairn, Deanston. Great drams. They just never had the investment behind them. But they're great drams at great prices, and they're fine. They're doing really well. So, yeah, it's interesting to see.
yeah. So if we were to say next year, where do you see whiskey?
Who do I
If
see
you had
whiskey?
a magic ball,
If I had a magic crystal ball, where would whiskey be?
where would whiskey be?
I think we would be having pretty much the same conversation.
Same conversation.
Yeah.
How long do you think it would take this cycle to work its way through?
Another 5 years.
Another 5.
Yeah.
So
Because I think the cycle started 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So essentially it's a 10-year cycle, but we're only now kind of waking up to the fact
Yes.
that, oh shit, we're not actually selling as much as we thought we did.
Yes.
And I think the next 5 years are going to be very, very tough. There's going to be sadly, there's going to be a lot of closures.
I'm already seeing the closures. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in America, people are really, really struggling.
Yeah.
What would you say to the brands that are starting?
Find your point of difference. Stay tough. Work out what people want to drink. Have faith in your product. Don't take the FMCG route, and don't try and follow short-term trends. Be true to who you are, and that all sounds kind of ridiculously bland and platitudinous, but that's the way that you survive. If you can lay down stock, lay down stock.
I think that's the hard one, right?
Yeah,
Laying down stock.
that's the hard one. But at the end of the day, if you've got stock, when we come out of it, if you've got stock, then you're going to be okay. Remember, whiskey is a long-term business. And it worries me that so many new distillers came in not realizing that.
Yeah.
Thinking that, as soon as it's 3 years old, they could sell it. You'll sell some at 3 years old, but you won't necessarily sell it at 4 years old or 5 years old, as people have done. They'll sell it 10 years old. So, make sure you're different, make sure you're quality. Make sure you lay down stock. Make sure you put the plan for the future. Send the piece in. Sails you story waters. You batten down hatches and tires, lash yourself to the wheel, and you navigate your way through.
I say stay crazy.
That's fun. People go, hey Dave, have you ever thought of opening a distillery? No. No. I've been in this business almost 40 years.
Sometimes when you know too much, it's harder, right?
Yeah.
You know where all the downfalls are.
People traveling big guns at months and they'll panic because nobody working in the major whiskey companies has actually been through a downturn. There's no greybeards going, aha, I've seen this before. You need people, honestly, to go, it's all right, I've seen this before. This is how we got through it the last time. And it won't be identical. The way that we got through it Scotch-wise the last week, the way Scotch got through it the last time, let's take them all. Because Scotch is a blended market, and we've seen them all that hold Scotch back off into credibility. And I think the way that the whiskey will come back out of this particular one is through the world of whiskey and the quality of whiskey which does exist. That's what's going to turn it. And actually, it will be a move away from the model, which I think has already happened, but move away from that mental image that people have of here is Scotch and here is bourbon, and these are the big players, and here's everything else, into there simply being quality whiskey, and we will pick from here and here and here and here. But that's what's going to keep whiskey through. So quality whiskey getting made all around the world, because I think the consumer in 5 years, 10 years time, that is what we will be looking for. And that's a big issue for the longer established whiskey distilling countries, to be able to try and get their head around that. And I think they will, but I think the good ones will. But I think they will be casualty. There's a nice optimistic way to end.
That's all right. It's kind of in the conversation for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Recession and
it's tough, COVID and recession and everything. I think in terms of what areas are exciting me, from a geographical point of view, Nordics, Australia, New Zealand, definitely. I think some really good stuff in Japan as well, and Ireland. In the next 5 years, Ireland's suddenly going to go amazing stuff happening in Ireland again. I think the other big trend at the moment that you didn't mention is that the way in which today's distillers are really beginning to look at how whiskey was made in the past. I think that's really relevant in Ireland, going back to pot still recipes from the 19th and 18th centuries, and adapting them to today. So that's exciting. So yeah, I think there's a vast amount of new thinking going on with whiskey. And yeah, but those areas are the ones geographical. Those are the ones that are exciting me. In terms of production, yeast, heritage barley varieties, those are the two big areas for me.
cool.
Oh, and one other thing. There's something I've just been obsessing about, and I can't prove it. I don't think. Distiller's mind, the brewer's mind, the winemaker's mind, because this came to focus when I was out in the West Coast, the American West Coast. So the number of guys from breweries who then became distillers, and the brewer's mentality is completely different to a distiller's mentality, because a brewer will look at roasting barley and yeast and everything at the beginning of the process, and you taste it. You pick up one of those whiskies and they're amazing, and you go, yeah, I can understand, because I can kind of taste the beer in there. But if you go to Australia and New Zealand and France, you've got distillers who are coming in from wine, and their mindset and their palate is completely different to a brewer, because they're looking at the structure and elegance and length and all of that, and the whiskies reflect it. And I'm really, really interested in following that and just seeing how that is another area of diversity.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I have a wine background as well. So for me, I'm always looking for that cask influence from wine. Yeah. And just seeing if different regions of wine.
And then you begin to it, and you just kind of go, St. George, the wine guns, the distillers run the wine guns.
Yeah.
And you taste those whiskies, and you get, I get it. Kurt Jordan, a winemaker, I get it. No? Yeah.
Well, and then Star Wars here, really right?
Exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Yeah, can't prove it again. Yeah.
I know. I think it's a great point, because most people come from brew background, and even when you're studying distilling, the courses like IBD, for example, they split it up into brewers or distillers. So there's no wine course, right? Unless you're talking to the WSET. Yeah. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. That was good. It was a good chat. Very good chat.
There's one thing we're going to do that's completely off. So the magazine is doing a reel, and it's a saw.
Yeah.
And we're lip syncing